You turn him up a little bit.
Who? Who do I need to turn up?
James Manning, Chair.
James, you have control of your volume.
Yeah. Oh, you guys can't hear me?
Oh, there we go. It's better now. Yep.
All right. Do anybody who's all there with you guys? Do we have a quorum?
Dan?
Kirsten.
Okay. All right. So let's call the meeting to order at 6:04.
Okay. I will conduct the roll call, if that's okay.
Yes.
So Chair Manning,
Present.
Danny Schreiber,
Present.
Michael Fuller, not present. John Steele, not present. Dan Salty. Yep. Kirsten Solberg,
Present.
Brad Stewart. Let's see. Okay, we have a quorum, Chair Manning.
All right. Thank you. Lynn, did you send the agenda other than last week?
I did not send it again. No, I'm sorry.
Okay. I was digging through trying to find it. Couldn't find it. So,
The first,
want- oh, go ahead.
they don't have anyone for public comment. And the next one would be approving the draft minutes for February 20th, 2024.
The yes, just sent out, correct?
Yeah, I just sent those out.
Okay. All right.
moved
I
to
don't know if
approve.
everybody's had an opportunity to review or not. Like I said, those were just sent out in the last half hour. I reviewed. Does anybody have any questions or have they reviewed?
Nope.
No comments?
Nope.
Okay, so could I get a motion to approve the draft meeting notes of February 20th?
I move to approve the draft meeting notes for February 20th, 2024.
Thank you. Second?
I could second it. That's fine.
Thank you, Danny. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I abstained. I wasn't there. I think we still.
Ask them how to form.
Yeah, but you have a quorum of.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, yeah. right.
I think so. We can always revisit if need be. So next meeting.
Yeah, from my understanding, you can sign this here.
Okay.
Okay. Well, the next two items are presentation and discussion of two different planning projects. One is Vision 43, the other one's and the second one's the waterfront project.
Okay.
Due to scheduling issues with Chris Myers and myself, we're actually hoping we can swap the order of those since Mr. Myers is coming from another engagement and I actually am double booked with another engagement at the end of the later on tonight. So if the HRB is okay with it, I'd like to present the waterfront project first. And then Mr. Myers will present Vision 43 after me. But we have to modify the agenda to
Right.
swap those items. Is that
So we need a motion to swap those items?
correct?
The chair goes to it.
I think so.
The chair's in charge of them.
Yeah.
You can move forward.
So if
So
it
can I
pleases the chair, we
Get a
can
motion
we can
from
swap.
somebody to swap those two items?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Motion though.
Okay.
No one wants the motion to swap those two items?
Yeah. Any opposition?
No.
No. Okay. I think we're good.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So I'm here tonight to discuss if it's okay to move on. I'm here tonight to talk about the Westland Waterfront project. And my goal tonight is just to give you an overview of the project, of where we're at. And then and then as part of that, I would strongly encourage HRB members to take a look at the project website, where we have a survey, and you can actually comment directly on the plan. And so, which I'll be discussing about tonight. And if you want to, if you want to discuss this further at the next meeting, I'm happy to add it to the next agenda meeting or further on this year as the project progresses. So. But
May I ask how long public comment is accepted for this survey?
through the end of May, essentially. So, yeah, so another 6 or 7 weeks. So. Also, too, I apologize if anyone has emailed me in recent weeks. I've been on vacation and I have about 400 emails I'm still going through. So I apologize if I haven't gotten back. Okay.
Is the waterfront one on the screen right now? James and Danny?
Yeah, it
Okay,
is.
So
Yep.
what can I not?
you have to click over there. Are you clicking on?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
When you posted the survey a few weeks ago.
Yeah, the survey was posted about 2 months ago,
Yeah.
6 or 8 weeks ago. Yeah, but there's an interactive
I
component
mean,
as
the
well.
presentation stuff when I saw was really well.
Okay.
I mean, it's exciting.
Oh, hey. Looks like we have a member joined us. Mr. Fuller, thank you. Nice to see you there.
I apologize for being late, guys.
Hey, no worries.
Have you seen the other?
I don't know why it's not letting us scroll through.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
just
good.
about that.
Are we on Teams or are we on WebEx?
One building. they
There for a second?
Get it?
Actually, are we still?
Okay, if you go to where the waterfront is, right there,
Mhm.
that's the screen that's being shared. So unshare it and then you go back to the meeting. Stop sharing right there.
Okay.
So now we're in the meeting.
Reputation for angles.
Oh, very strange.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's not working.
This is, apologies,
Wait, what's that? Oh, they want to present in Teams. We're in WebEx. You click in there.
Can you just take that PowerPoint and email it to us and we can follow along?
Good
Yeah.
idea.
I'll go ahead and email
now I
it to
can't
you.
even open this. I can't even.
Since you have this.
I could present from my desktop. How would I do that?
What do you mean? Oh, okay, yeah,
Go back to my desk. That'll be easier. So
okay. I'll be right
Alright.
back.
I'll be right back.
On the screen.
Punch yourself.
On screen.
Lynn, do you know who owns? Waterfront now?
The Oregon, isn't it, Grand Rock Tribe?
I thought they got sick of the process and said they were out.
Oh, I don't think so, no.
No?
No,
Okay.
I don't know. You may not, you're probably watching that way more than.
I know this was like, I thought a year or two ago.
Last I heard, I
I think that's pretty.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
But I do think they still own it, yeah. But it may be, for the where they're at.
They took one building down.
Is it?
Yeah, big one.
Sure, they're.
Okay, sorry to keep you guys waiting. So let's try this again. And hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint title. I'm sorry, that's the wrong. It's the wrong one. You guys are the HRB. Okay, well, hopefully everyone can see the title slide. And since I can't actually see your hands raised virtually, and I'm not in the room, just feel free to just speak up and interrupt me if you have any questions.
Okay, we're looking at.
There we go. Okay. Tech issues. So I'm here just to give the HRB an overview of the Westland Waterfront project. And so this is a long-range planning project. I know, Chair Manning is also part of the working group on this project. And so we are, we're actively working on a vision plan right now based upon historical planning work, which is then going to inform, zoning changes in the area and potentially other aspects of the city's regulatory structure in order to encourage redevelopment and better public access to the waterfront area. And so what are we talking about by the waterfront area? And so it's a rather hidden part of the city, unfortunately, which is unfortunate given its significance. The planning area is about 275 acres in size. It runs in between I-205 and the Willamette River from the bridge, from the 205 bridge, all the way down to the Blue Heron process ponds, down by the wetlands in Lower Willamette. The area is pretty isolated. It's hard for people to access. We have the second largest waterfall by volume in the country, and most people can't really see it unless you're crossing the Arch Bridge. It's isolated it's cut off from most of the city by 205. There are large wetlands down in Willamette. There's steep terrain differentials between existing housing and businesses in the river. And there's just substandard roadways. So not a lot of sidewalks. Roadways are pretty narrow, so it's just hard to get in and out of the area. That said, though, the falls are really the sort of it's why Westland exists. Really, it's been a place of commerce and culture and sort of identity for centuries, both for current Westland residents, but a lot of the indigenous tribal nations that lived here or would travel here to for commerce purposes or spiritual reasons. This area is it's mostly zoned industrial, but some commercial and residential. It contains Westland's largest employer, which is the paper mill. It's been there for over 100 years. We also have the PG hydro plant as well. That's a pretty significant structure, both to PG as well as the broader sort of cultural history of the area. But because of this industrial past, we have a lot of industrial infrastructure which is aging and not really set up for current needs. We have large parking lots where there could be housing or shops or public space. And in our industrial zoning district, which covers the vast majority of the area, I don't have the exact percentage available to me right now, really precludes a lot of the types of uses that people want to see down by the river. I was recently speaking to a consultant for the Willamette Falls Trust, which represents 4 tribal nations, and the current zoning really makes it difficult to even establish open space down there. So even if we wanted to put in a park, it would be very difficult to put in some park improvements because of this industrial zoning. So we're kind of getting in our own way because of this industrial legacy. And the last thing I'd say about this, about existing conditions, is that the city doesn't own a lot of property down here. So really, the city's power is in directing public investment through in the right of ways, and then also leveraging the resources we do own, which is historic City Hall and Westbridge Park, I think it is, down there right under 205. Otherwise, most of this land is owned by PGE or Schultz Development Group or other private entities. So really, the city doesn't have the power to go in there and make change without partnering with other people. So, so given those conditions, what are we trying to do? Well, we're starting with the vision plan for the project area, and so the idea is to come up with an achievable, sort of realistic and community-driven framework. And pre-pandemic, there's a lot of workshops and planning work done from 2016 through 2020 in order to try and develop a vision plan for this area. And what we're doing is actually picking up that pre-COVID work and running with it, and ensuring that all that time and effort it stays relevant and meaningful. So right now, what we're doing is that we've drafted out a vision plan based upon that pre-pandemic work, and now we're checking back in with the community to make sure that that input is still relevant. So the planning area, because it's so different in terms of topography and existing uses and zoning, is that we've actually broken it up into 3 sub-districts, and the vision plan addresses each sub-district in a distinct manner. You have the historic City Hall district, which is really, it's the lower end of historic Bolton around the bridgehead that was sort of isolated when I-205 went in. And so that area it's characterized by it has Highway 43 going through it. It has some existing commercial uses there, and it has a large open area which is sort of available for future redevelopment on the parking lot area. It also has a lot of historic resources there as well. You have historic City Hall, you have the apartments right by the bridge, you have that row of historic homes along Willamette Falls Drive. And then in the middle, you have the Cultural Heritage District, which is really Moores Island and is mostly owned by PGE as well. And so that's sort of the heart of the district. And really right now, that area is highly constrained, both by things like floodplain, but also FERC licensing and the needs of operating a large utility district there. But it's also really it's Willamette Falls itself. So and because of that and the very limited access to the island, that has its own unique challenges. And then the third district is the Pond Redevelopment District down in Lower Willamette, which is characterized by floodplain, the city's largest wetland complex, and these sort of large industrial process ponds. So one of which is owned by PG, the other is owned by Schultz Development Group, and so we have these legacies of contamination, but we also have these really immense wetland resources there, which have evolved over time, and so the possibilities down there are different than the possibilities up by the Arch Bridge. So in doing this plan, in the pre-pandemic planning work and the public workshops, 4 key values were established as part of that work, which kind of and which is informing the draft vision plan. I have copies in the room today, and I think there are copies available online on the project website if you're not here. But the vision plan sort of focuses the plan around these 4 values of reinvestment, transportation improvements, river access, and historic character. And these things sort of overlap, but reinvestment could be things like, investing in historic City Hall, which also reinforces historic character. Transportation improvements is not just for cars, but also, human access to the river and sort of, hiking trails, things like that. And so reinvestment is also turning brownfield sites and old parking lots into active areas. And so if you look at the plan, you'll see these values as you know, as lenses through which to look at possibilities. Also too, in terms of like where change is most likely to be seen, I've put 2 stars on the map there. These are areas where near-term change is most likely to happen. One is at the bridgehead there in the historic City Hall district. There are existing property owners there are very much interested in investing their properties and redeveloping them into something much more active for housing or commerce. However, they're waiting for this planning process to finish. And so also down Schultz Development Group owns the sort of westernmost process pond down there. He has interest in remediating that pond and actually redeveloping that site in some way. And I'll talk about those in a minute. But as part of this project, the idea is to balance zoning changes which achieve community goals as well as private goals. And so I think as part of these zone changes, we have to make sure that the public goals are still achieved while allowing private investment to happen. So for example, allowing more housing there, but ensuring that housing provides public access to the river, and so things like that. I put those 2 stars at the end because the PG property owned in the middle is subject to FERC to federal licensing, and that creates a lot of long-term sort of longer timelines to changing what happens there. So in terms of this, we're doing ongoing community engagement for this. As I mentioned before, there's about 5 years of past planning work that is informing the current vision plan on the website. We have a stakeholder working group that has met a few times, and we'll meet again in June to sort of check in about the results of the public engagement. We're also doing direct consultation with property owners and the tribal nations that have historic residency or rights to the falls. And so we've been meeting with them to garner their input and ensure that we understand their needs and desires. We also have a public involvement plan that was blessed by City Council and the CCI. And so we are currently in the process of engaging the community. There was an open house last month. We have a project website where there's a survey and an interactive PDF where you can not only review the vision plan but drop comments directly in there, and then respond to comments that other people have made. And so I'm really trying to drive people to the website. Please engage with that and drop your comments in there because they will be documented for the record and help us refine this plan further. So this weekend, actually, I'm going to park myself down off Fulp Street and talk to dog walkers who sort of walk the area along Fulp and Fourth around the Blue Heron Pond. And I know that's a pretty heavily traveled area, so I'm going to be there at 7 a.m. and with a cup of coffee and trying to talk to people about that. And finally, we're also pulling together a technical advisory committee to help make sure other agencies get early input on this as well. So in terms of where we are now, right now we're taking public comments on this through the survey and whatnot through the end of May and on the draft vision plan. And once we feel like we have a good sense of that, we're going to start drafting out things like the transportation analysis and a potential draft zoning changes to implement the vision plan to be taken through Planning Commission and the City Council for discussion and deliberation. So the draft community vision plan, the February version is on the city's website out for public comment. We also have a market trend analysis being done by Leland and Associates. That's going to be published on the website here the next week or two. So that's going to be up there as well. And if you go to the project website, you'll also see a list of other projects where we're going to be present at. So at Cinco de Mayo and other neighborhood associations and whatnot, where you can interact with staff to talk to us about the project. So in terms of tracking and coordination, this is a time period in which there's actually surprising, different parties are actually doing a lot of planning work in this area, which are outside the city, but actually overlap with our goals here. So the first is the Willamette Falls Intertribal Public Access Project. And what that essentially is that the Willamette Falls Trust is engaging with PGE on a private project to construct public access to Moores Island. You know, the rendering on the screen here actually is pulled from their, from some of their public engagement documents. But essentially, this is a project whereby 4 tribal nations and PG are seeing if there's a way to construct trails and boardwalks and other access and public spaces around the paper mill on Moores Island. And so the idea would be not to displace the paper mill, but to use all those remnant and unused upland areas for public access and for cultural practices. And so this is private money, and they'll also probably want to tap into public monies. But the idea, but essentially, we are sort of tracking each other's projects to make sure that we overlap and are consistent on that. Another project is the Blue Heron Aeration and Settling Basin. This is the Blue Heron Pond down there on Volp Street. The owner of that right now is working with DEQ on a remediation plan, and is also engaging with us through a series of pre-application conferences in order to redevelop discrete portions of the site. The wetlands and the floodplain areas are to be protected, but there's some upland areas around that which are currently going through that, and so all those are open to the public, and then any development applications will be duly noticed and before the Planning Commission. And then also finally, there's the Historic City Hall project, the HRB. I feel a number of you were on the HRB when that project was when the adaptive reuse of that project was approved. And so that project's currently underway. They're right now dealing with asbestos in the building, and so that's kind of that's the current phase of that project right now. So where are we going? We, as I mentioned earlier, we're pulling together a technical working group to make sure different state agencies and local governments are involved, as well as other city departments. So Parks Department, Engineering, Department of State Lands, Oregon City. So they will be providing technical guidance as we move forward. And then also in terms of where we're going, we'll be doing ongoing public consultation through the end of the project next spring. So right now, the survey on the website does run through the end of May. However, we will still be going out to things like to the HRB, to Bolton Neighborhood Association, to Willamette Neighborhood Association, and other groups to hear feedback and comments. So on that, I think once the vision plan is largely, once we receive feedback on that, we're going to start working on a zoning analysis and potential amendments to the CDC to sort of change the range of uses. So, for example, there was that market study that identified a number of uses that are likely to be successful in the area and needed. A summary of that is in the vision plan, but for example, it said things like public facing industrial would be a good use around Historic City Hall and the cultural district, and those are things like brew pubs where you have production occurring, but the public can come in and sort of enjoy themselves there, or other makerspace, or the market study also said a destination hotel would also probably do well here, that really focused on interacting with the falls. So like a standard Motel 6 probably would not, but something sort of like a destination hotel would. It also talked about multifamily housing. There's a big need for that regionally. there's a big housing demand there. City has not had a multifamily project in at least 10 years. So that's something that could be a good, or a mixed use built sort of scenario around the historic City Hall area would be a good use there. And then also we'll be doing a transportation analysis to make sure the proposed change in uses are not going to compromise the transportation network. So to make sure that we're not going to overwhelm the network by changing these uses. So I think that's my high level overview. There's a QR code on your screen if you want to pull up the project website, or you can, I think you all have my contact information. So if you have any questions, but that's kind of where we're at this point. And maybe I'll just turn it over to questions.
I thought of one, because the Willamette River is a national river trail or water.
Yes.
trail. Is
Mhm.
that part of considerations for the development at all?
I think it's something to be noted in terms of that. And so I think I don't recall offhand if it's specifically addressed in there, but that's something we would want to mention in there as part of the opportunities analysis on that. And
Part of the working group is the river keepers, so.
correct. Yeah, the river keepers were recently added to the working group on that. So
I'm sure they
John, I have
love
a question.
the campsite there for people on the water trail if there's an
yeah.
opportunity for that.
Yeah, that was actually mentioned as part of a potential land use. I think in the plan was like a camping, like a small camping area, as one possibility. So
Yeah.
John, I have one question for
Yeah.
you. Since the purview of this organization and our group is supposed to be historic resources and historic preservation, I haven't heard much discussion about historic preservation in the area besides City Hall.
yes,
Anything else? And there's a lot of historic stuff in there dating all the way back to the native tribes and beyond.
I agree.
But I haven't seen much. I've gone through the survey and stuff, and I saw nothing that really talked about preservation or interpretation or anything. And I'm just curious if that's going to be addressed at all. Like, because the last proposal years and years ago, that was a big problem because there was nothing in there about preservation.
Yes.
So has that been addressed, or is that being addressed?
Okay. Well, so I think a couple of things here. There is an inventory in the existing conditions area that does identify some of the major resources there. During the consultation process, the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Run pointed out that there is there's a village site within the planning area, and so for reasons of protection of these resources, their exact locations are not typically published in terms of that, and so they're pre-European contact resources are typically not published for that reason, because people there's reasons of theft and vandalism on that. That said, though, the Moores Island is full of historic structures. And, in terms of that, I know there's, the various structures there. There's the locks. There's a lot of there's some pictographs, as I understand it, and the rocks carved in there from the tribal nations, and early graffiti from some of the early European explorers out here as well. So I think a couple of things here. The chapter 25 currently applies to this area and will continue to apply in terms of that. I think where this comes into play is where, in terms of identifying what sort of zoning standards are applied, during this next process. And that comes down to maybe any design standards that get adopted, which to ensure compatibility, or at least some level of sort of acknowledgement of those historic patterns there. So I know in the distant past there was a look at the historic city hall city hall area about whether or not there was a sufficient collection of buildings to have some sort of historic district in the area. And so I know that that was explored at some point in the past.
No,
And so
but-
that,
So you
yeah,
said chapter 25 applies, but chapter 25 doesn't apply to Moore's Island.
so chapter 25 applies generally to historic resources in the city, basically.
But there's some properties in there, a number of houses that are not landmarks yet, even though they're old enough and they should absolutely qualify. They haven't been put on landmark status. As well as all the properties that are over 100 years old on Moore's Island. None of those are landmarks.
Correct. Yeah.
So as well as even like Sullivan Power Station is not a landmark status.
And so,
So all of those are not protected resources. So saying is protected by chapter 25 isn't exactly accurate. It's only a handful of properties that are, and it's only a handful, as well as the one national registry on, with two national registries in the area.
so there are like, so without, I guess I could pull this up on your screen, or I could do this as a follow-up discussion item maybe for next month on this, is that there are a number of resources around the Arch Bridge which are listed. There's Historic City Hall, there are the apartments, across the street. Most of those houses there on the bluff above Historic City Hall are actually listed as protected. And the locks are also listed. And I believe a part of Moore's Island, I'll have to double check on that, but I think
Anything on Moore's Island is, because
Yeah,
he's kind of been resistant to that.
I think so as well. So I'm going from memory here, but part of but Oregon law is set up in such a way in which owner consent is necessary in order to get things listed.
And
So
PG has stated that they're not going to do that because of their FERC permit and things
correct.
associated with the power plant. They can't get it designated and then go in and refurbish if they wanted to.
Correct. Yeah. So there are issues there. That said, though, I think the power station is one of PG's babies, and so I think they're exceptionally proud of that. I don't think that's at risk. I think that's something they're going to protect. So I think in terms of that, but yeah, there are existing protections there, and I think something that could be examined would be design standards around Historic City Hall to sort of reinforce that historic character, if that was felt to be appropriate, and that's something that could be discussed.
And I think on your presentation where you put the 2 stars, for around Historic City Hall and then the pond area, those are the 2 areas that are going to get actions first, as you said.
Correct.
And those are the ones that, that chapter 25 really will follow, we'll be able to follow those recommendations and those protections already there.
Yeah.
Because around the pond, there's only one spot that I know of that is kind of cool, that I don't know if you could protect it or not, but where the old Minky Mill was. There's still remnants of the mill and house down there, if you know where to look.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, just odd things of their everyday life that they had down there before, while the sawmill was there.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That might be something to further explore. One thing I will mention that came up at a recent planning conference is that the state is looking into having new archaeological survey requirements during development. And so that's something that's pretty standard in California and Washington. It's a huge gap here in Oregon. And so even though it's not a vertical resource, you may have sort of subsurface remnants such as mills or indigenous sort of resources there. So that may be a future protection for some of these things.
So John, when you're down there on Saturday, make sure you have some good shoes, and behind the pump station right there on the corner.
Yep.
Walk from the pump station, walk towards the river at like a 30-degree angle towards the creek.
Yep.
And you'll see some of that stuff.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Back there in the bushes. And also notice the different trees that are in that area. There's fruit trees, and there's all different types of trees in that area because those were brought in and planted around the house.
Of course.
And the whole river bank up and down the river looks completely different one spot where the house was.
Interesting. Okay, I will do that. And that, and again, and this, and these are, so things like this are comments the HRB or individuals can actually provide through the survey or through a letter from the HRB or things like that. So today is not the only day we're talking about this.
Yeah.
This is an ongoing sort of thing. But so I will certainly do that, Chair Manning. So I thank you for that tip on that.
No problem.
Yeah, Danny, does that answer your question at all?
Well,
Help you
yeah,
a
except
little
for
bit?
it does and it doesn't because it's still not on the plan yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And the properties that are protected by Chapter 25, there's not enough of
Yeah.
them on there.
Yeah.
Because the previous plan didn't have anything to protect. For example, if they happen to pull up a piece of concrete and find, archaeological,
Yeah.
the problem is with our Oregon code, as you know, John, is if they find something archaeological, they got to stop.
Yeah.
If they don't, they don't have to.
Yeah.
And so it encourages the bulldozers to just scoop it
Uh-huh.
up and throw it away without looking. Because if you can scoop it up and throw it away fast enough, you don't have to see that there's actually arrowheads or signs of previous occupation. Because you can just dump it in a dumpster and haul it off like when they were doing Willamette Falls Drive. Nobody slowed down to look to see if there was anything there. They just scooped it and shoveled it. So it'd be nice if maybe the city did something preemptively to say, hey, we should do an archaeological survey. I know the state's doing that's great, but maybe the city might want to think about that. Because that area especially, I know there's tribal stuff there, but it's also, there's first white settlers that were over there too, in that whole area as well.
Absolutely.
That's where Linn City was, the very first white, occupation over there was that area. So there's probably lots of archaeology in there that would not want to be picked up, because if it does, then they got to stop the project.
Yeah.
Hey, John, would it be possible to just put a quick map together, not only for this group, but for the waterfront group, of the properties that are protected versus the properties that aren't protected in each one of those zones?
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the, so you'll see like a sort of high level map on page 24 of the vision plan, but I can get something a little bit higher detail.
Yeah.
And so pull together. Yeah, absolutely.
To Danny's point, the houses along Willamette Falls Drive, the old manager's house, and those, those are protected, but there's, the ones that are on, was Mill Street, I guess is what it's called, underneath the bridge. I don't think anything's protected below the apartments, is it?
I don't believe so.
And
on
there's some super
territorial
old houses in there. Some really old houses.
There are. So yeah, so
actually, and not all of the houses on the bluff are protected, because the Historical Society was contacted by one set of neighbors there who is not protected, and by the previous one of our previous staffers on the city said their house is going to be bulldozed if there's a project.
Okay.
So, and they actually came to that. Well, luckily enough, that couple came to the when we did the historic meeting, John, the how to protect your house. So they were one of the people who was there to help to get their house listed, but I don't know if they've considered that, but yeah, that scared them into it, of getting it listed.
Because those houses down on Mill Street, I don't know, is that staircase still there after the roundabout addition?
I haven't been down there. I believe it is. Yes, I've not been down there. That can
be protected too, because that was the stairs that took you from the riverboat, from the riverboats up to the bluff on the West Linn side.
Interesting.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah, and then there's another one I was wanting to talk. This is completely off topic, has nothing to do with the waterfront, but there was a staircase that went from the mill all the way up to basically Sunset Park. And over the years, pieces of that has disappeared. The mill actually built that thing in the late 1800s for their workers that lived in Sunset, so they could walk a straight set of stairs down to the mill.
Makes sense. Yeah.
During all weather. Yeah. And I went on Google Earth the other day to try to see if I could find it, and I can't find in some spots I could tell where it was because,
Yeah.
you know, the excavation, but I couldn't find any of the steps.
Interesting. Okay.
You know, and they were right. If you were coming off of Willamette Falls Drive up into Sunset, you go over the overpass and that first little dead end road to the right-hand side.
Hmm.
At the end of that road is where those stairs kind of, you know, started going up the hill.
Hmm.
They used to go up the hill all the way, but the highway took a lot of them out, and then they went up farther. But you know, the old upper parking lot that's not being used for
Yes.
the mill?
Yep. Yep.
They came basically out of that.
Okay.
when-
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'll look into that. So, okay.
Over on Willamette Falls Drive in Willamette all
Mhm.
disappeared. And those weren't just stairs to go from the street down. Those were
Yeah.
trolley stops.
All the way
you
up.
know?
Hmm.
Where's your current 100-year floodplain pulled from? Is that FEMA, and do they plan on updating that map anytime soon?
Yeah. So everything is based upon FEMA mapping, and it was updated in the last decade or so. I don't recall the exact year, but yeah, that's all based on FEMA data. So, well, I need to take off here in a couple of minutes. I'm happy to come back and continue this conversation next month, if you guys are up for that. Was there any other questions at this time? Okay. Okay. Well, I will work on the map, on that map suggestion, and have a help us have a more refined conversation about what existing protections are there, and then maybe things to look at going forward, since it's within the purview of the HRB to sort of talk about these things. So, and then if you have any ideas or thoughts or suggestions in the meantime, just feel free to email or call me or reach out, and we can continue this. So I think with that, I'm going to introduce Chris Meyer, who appears to be on the call. So, and I'll pass it off to him. But it was nice seeing everyone tonight.
Thank you, John.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks, John. Appreciate the intro. Everybody,
That's a hard
let's
site.
try and get my PowerPoint up. Can everyone hear me okay? Lynn, can you hear me okay?
No,
Here, Chris.
very light.
Very light. So I have one light and a bunch of head nods. Let me get my PowerPoint up first. Let's figure this out. Second. So while I am getting that up and going, stop. Sorry, I've got multiple screens here. While I'm getting that all wired up. There. All right, are we all looking at a big old Vision 43 brand on there?
Yes.
Yep. All right, cool. I'm in the right spot. Yeah, so I appreciate your time. My name's Chris Myers. I'm one of the planners here at the city, and I'm the project manager on a project we call Vision 43. I won't take too much of your time tonight, but I will certainly try and give you a nice overview of what we're doing. So the Vision 43 project, as you can see that kind of worm-shaped map I've got at the top of the slide, is essentially a project we're doing on the Highway 43 corridor from the Lake Oswego West Linn border to the I-205 overpass on Highway 43. I will note that the east-west, or the river and hillside borders of that map, are not set in stone. We just needed to kind of give it a shaded area to give it some focus. The borders on the east-west will come into play, or will start to solidify as we move through the project, and you'll understand that a little bit more here in a minute. So basically what the Vision 43 project is we are looking to create a new community vision for Highway 43. An extensive part of this program, or of this project, I'm sorry, is engaging communities and neighbors, as we want the community to craft this vision, not, City Hall or planners, but we want to know how the community wants Highway 43 to look and to act as we move into the future. We are looking at improving opportunities for walking and bicycling. As I've been out in the community, this is bubbling up as being a very large interest to people, particularly moving adjacent to the highway, not necessarily going up to Highway 43 or down to Highway 43 and then on it, but moving through the neighborhoods parallel to 43 and having better access that way. We are certainly looking to create opportunities for more businesses, hopefully local businesses, as well as diversifying housing options and, of course, places to gather as a community. We'll be updating city plans. We'll be updating policies, as well as some code development along the way. This is a council docket priority. Council funded this project in the last budget cycle. We went through an RFP interviewing and application process, and the firm MIG was awarded the contract. So as you can see on the timeline here, we expect the project to wrap sometime in sometime in the fall of 2025. Trying to leave that a little loose. These projects sometimes don't always end right when you want them to. So that's kind of what we're shooting for, sometime October-ish of 25. Right now, are we in April? Through the end of 2024, we're out and about doing extensive community engagement, coming to HRB and to neighborhood associations, other advisory groups, going to events within the community. We are going to concerts in the park, and we'll be at the Old Time Fair and the farmers market. And I have personally committed to city council to doing around 30 events internally as staff. Mostly that means myself and Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. And then MIG will also be running they'll be doing 4 listening sessions with the Bolton Neighborhood Association, 4 listening sessions with the Robinwood Neighborhood Association, and then 2 listening sessions with the Neighborhood Neighborhood Association Presidents Group. So we have earmarked some funds and some time with the consultant for those 2 adjacent neighborhood associations to get more, to make sure that their voices are heard as well, as they have, be adjacent to the corridor. Oh, well, I basically just said all that. We are out and about in the community, and will be through the end of this year. I've been working with the Youth Advisory Council, which is a 16-member group of high school students from Westland High School. I meet with them monthly, although I didn't meet with them today. There are 5 out of the last 6 or something like that. Getting some youth feedback as well. So the status, where we're at right now. So we have our project website that's live. That's yourwestlinn.com/vision43. We conducted pop-up event at the St. Patrick's Day event. We will be doing a tour of the corridor with City Council and the Planning Commission, and we'll be taking them to not only Highway 43, then we'll travel into Lake Oswego, look a little bit at the Weiser blocks, and then head over to Boone's Ferry, where Boone's Ferry kind of looks and acts a lot like Highway 43 in West Linn, and they've done quite a bit of work over there. So we're just really trying to look at similar projects in the area and what other jurisdictions have done to help kind of give a frame of reference of what could be done, or maybe what we don't want done. We are continuing to work with getting feedback from the community to identify sort of corridor focus areas, and of course scheduling neighborhood listening sessions. So far we have a survey on our website. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that. We have a survey on our website, but also on the website, if you go there, you can put pins and comments on our interactive map. Highlight areas you like, areas you don't like. We have some of the historic landmarks in our GIS system, but certainly feel free to jump in there and highlight them if you have something to say about them, or just want to make sure they're recognized. So it's for anyone to go, and really what we're going to be doing is funneling all of the information and data we receive through that webpage so people can see what we're hearing and what's happening. So initially, as you can see, the big light green bar there for improvement for cars. I think what we're seeing is we're needing to clarify our message about what this project is and what this project isn't. So what it isn't is not a roadway project. It is not about potholes and striping and that kind of thing. That's an ODOT issue. This is about the land uses adjacent to Highway 43, as well as connectivity. We are going to be putting together a technical advisory group. ODOT will be a part of that, as will the county, the city, Metro, TriMet. And I think that what is coming to light so far in some of my communications with the community is the speed limit seems to be bubbling up as an issue. Specifically why in Lake Oswego it's 25 miles an hour on Highway 43 and why in Westland it's 35 miles an hour. So that can certainly be a discussion with ODOT through the technical advisory group when we set that up in a couple of months or so. But as you can also see, sidewalks and pathways is rising up as being important, as well as safety improvements. We've had about 320 people take the survey so far, and hopefully that number will move well into the thousands before the end of the project. We really want to try and hear from as many people as possible. There's some more information that we're hearing, more places for shopping, eating, and recreation, green spaces, parks and trails, housing options is a little low right now, but we're seeing mixed use development as bubbling up as being a fairly popular item, as well as places for events. So we're starting to see some patterns. So one of the things, again, that's bubbling up is some gathering places, and these are just, basic shots of other places that have some gathering spaces for the community to go and be. Mixed use zoning oftentimes means things like housing above retail and commercial. These are just examples. We're not trying to sell these as options. We're just giving people a visual representation of what mixed use tends to mean and what town centers tend to mean. There's some more. They've recognized a couple of those as being in Westland. Housing examples. So just different styles of housing. One of the impetus for the project that council has been very concerned with is just the limited number of housing options that we have and different types. We're obviously very, very single family house centric here in West Linn. So that is something that's out there that we're working on. So we've had meetings with Robinwood Neighborhood Association, the West Linn Alliance. We've been handing out flyers at an ACC event. We've done briefings with various advisory groups. I've met with the high school civics instructor, working on maybe putting together a project that the high school civics students can kind of weigh in and help us with the project a little bit and hear their voice. We are potentially doing a youth advisory art project to see what their thoughts about what they want to see on Highway 43 might look like. So where are we going? So we will probably maybe be at the Cinco de Mayo. That one's kind of in question just because our calendar is filling up. We have various events at the library. We have a community kickoff event, which actually we've changed. It's now going to be June 8th. And we'll be sending that information out and putting it on the website. And then we're starting to schedule our first of what are going to be 4 living room meetings. And those are a meeting where a community member hosts me and 10 or 12 of their friends. And I come to their home and we sit down and just talk about Highway 43, talk about the corridor, talk about hopes, dreams, and desires for what it might look like. It's really meant to be a lower stress environment where we can have honest conversations and see where that goes. So we've scheduled to host 4 of those, or to have 4 of those. And we're starting to get that schedule wound up as well. Obviously, when you get into planning projects, financing is always a thing. So we will be doing there will be a firm that was hired to do the TIF district over by the waterfront. They will be doing a feasibility study after the community has honed in on what their vision is. Once we've gone through the community engagement process, sometime in January, February of 25, the consulting firm will put together a feasibility study of that vision. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we have the technical advisory group coming. Here in a couple months, we'll get that put together. So neighborhood input and discussion. Some of the things that we've been asking are, what types of improvements on or near the Highway 43 corridor are needed? What should be considered to ensure safe access and travel for pedestrians and bicyclists? And what types of new opportunities along Highway 43 would people like the most? So we're really trying to prompt with open-ended questions and get a good feel for what people are interested in and what they'd like to see their community look like in the future. We feel pretty strongly that Highway 43 and positive changes in the corridor can be really valuable to the economic viability of West Linn into the future. So we're really wanting to hear what the community has to say. There are a lot of other moving parts, but that's just a good sort of 30,000 square foot with a little detail sprinkled in. It's our website there at the bottom. That's me, and I'm happy to answer any questions now, or if you think of something in a day, a week, a month, just reach out.
I have a question.
Sure.
So we went through two projects kind of that have a similar outlook. Is there a current bike path analysis through the city of West Linn and how everything kind of connects and future needs and connections? Or are you guys looking at these things as individual pieces?
So it's a good question, and one that similar questions come up. The 2016 concept plan, the Highway 43 concept plan, was really specific to the infrastructure of the highway itself. It wasn't about land use and what's allowed and what's not allowed. It was simply about, we need, you know, more right of way here and better bike lanes here. So they're not really connected. I mean, certainly it will inform a little bit, but what we really want now, since we don't own the highway, is we want to know what West Linn wants to be allowed and be used on and near Highway 43 and in that corridor. As for the bike lane question, I don't think, well, we do have a pedestrian and cycling inventory on our mapping system, but it's pretty out of date. And one of the things that I've been kind of nudging my boss, and hopefully in the future we can do after this project wraps, is to do a pedestrian analysis, a pedestrian needs analysis, and really look at where else can we keep connecting some of these sidewalks or the things that don't exist, bike lanes that stop and sidewalks that end and whatnot. So I think that's coming up in our future, I hope.
Can I make a quick comment about the speed limit in Lake Oswego?
Sure.
I know that the speed limit on Highway 43 in Lake Oswego is 25 miles an hour, but on Avenue A, which has much more development, much more pedestrians, the speed limit's 30 miles an hour.
Mhm.
I suspect it's maybe to discourage use of the highway as a highway, to have that discrepancy, or it might be because there's a lot more stoplights on Avenue A. But I just think it's sort of interesting that they have a higher speed limit on a road that has a lot more pedestrians and shops.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good comment. And I think one of the things that we're hearing, and that I certainly agree with, is we need better crossings and more consistent crossings on 43. Pedestrian refuge islands would be great. Better design for the highway itself. And I think in conjunction with that, speed limit is going to play a part. 35 is pretty uncomfortable when you're standing on that sidewalk. 25 is certainly quite a bit better. I also think, and this is just my own personal opinion, but if we want to discourage cut through traffic, if tolling ever comes around, which probably eventually it will, lower speed limits discourage cut through because it takes longer. So, you know, that's just my opinion, but you know, I've done a little transportation studying in my time.
So is that a questionnaire you have for Vision 43 under survey? Do you have something to the effect of traffic calming or slower pace in general?
Yeah. In the survey, in the survey, we don't. I think one of the things we're trying to remind people is that, number one, this project is not about the road. It's not. It is about land use adjacent.
ODOT's purview, right?
What's that?
You're trying to stay at ODOT's purview? Is that why you're saying it's not about the road?
Well, we did that plan in 2016 and we still have it, and we haven't done a single thing with it because we don't have any money to do it. So there's really no reason to redo a plan that still is completely viable today. Nothing's really changed on 43 since that 2016 plan was approved. And so we don't need to redo work that we've done and never implemented. And we went out for funding as part of the Metro bond measure in 2018 and it failed. 2019, I'm sorry, and it failed. So Metro has gone out for another bond, and I believe there's some money, but I don't believe much of it's being put into this area at this time. So what we first need to do is create a vision of what this community would like, our community here in West Linn would like the corridor to look like and act like. And then we have a little bit more leverage to start speaking with the ODOTs and the Metros about funding opportunities, funding mechanisms and whatnot. But what we can't do is go to them and say, well, we want to do other cool and other things, and we want some money. but we don't know what we want to do yet. That's just not how it's going to work. We have to go to them with a plan and say, this is what we are going to do. And we want you to be on board with that. And here's what we would like from you. So that's, and then you go out for grants as well. So there is money out there. West Linn hasn't been very active in trying to go get funds like that over the years. And I think now is the time for us to do that. If we want Highway 43 to look and act differently, then we need to do something and go make that happen. So we're hoping that's what the community would like to do. I know as a community member, I'm hoping. I certainly don't take my kids down there very often. It's just drive from one spot to the next. So we're hoping that we can make some neighborhood connections and make it a more pedestrian and cycling friendly environment, as well as better for local business and change some of the uses. And look, I told the Robinwood Neighborhood Association this last week, you know, we're going to have some hard conversations as a community. Height restrictions are going to have to be looked at, discussed, possibly changed. That doesn't mean 30 stories. It means more like 50 feet instead of 35. And like it or not, that's sort of how it works sometimes. And if we're going to improve some of our housing options and multifamily and retail, well, we're going to need to allow 3 stories, maybe 4. So if the community doesn't want that, then that won't be part of the project. But I think having hard discussions is something that we're going to have to do.
Chris, I have a question for you. There's not a lot of historic properties along Highway 43. I think there's only 7 protected properties in total, if I remember correctly.
I think that's right.
Somewhere around there. So it's not going to really impact us much, but are there any ideas or plans? And I'd have to go look at the map to see if those properties would be affected by any land use changes or anything like that you know of yet, or is that too early?
Yeah, it's actually, Danny, I'm glad you're asking because that's a good question and it actually applies. Sorry, I've got so many screens, I forget where the camera's at. It's a good question because I think it applies on a lot of different levels. I think people are going to get a little bit concerned about, wait, if you change the zone on my property, I have to be a residential or I have to be a business now. And it's like, no, not at all. It just allows for the future to be different. You can keep using something in perpetuity. You don't have to change anything. And so I think with the historic stuff, that's certainly on the radar of things that we'll be watching for. Because you're right, there are a few properties, and I can think of a couple off the top of my head. I always remember the ship house, the one with the communications center from the ship in the basement. And we'll probably just have to work around those because I don't think there's a lot we can really do, nor do we want to.
Chris, do you want to put the map up there from the website?
Which one?
The Vision 43 map
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I can go back to sharing that.
website.
Because
Oh,
I'm
the
curious
website.
to see, because there's the 7 houses are protected under Chapter 25, but if they get changed to commercial zoning, Chapter 25 doesn't do anything for commercial zoning. So then what would happen? Would they now go under Chapter 58? I don't know what would happen to them.
Yeah, honestly, I can't answer that question. I don't know. What I can say is no one has any interest in changing those properties. So if there needs to be protection written in, then we would do that. Oh, I forgot to mention, sorry, one of MIG's tasks in the process is to write a new mixed-use zoning code for West Linn. We have one, but it's geographically bounded down in the Willamette area, what I like to call Main Street. We can't use it elsewhere. It's stuck where it's at. So they'll be writing a new mixed-use code for us. And I think that's very easy to write in protections for existing historic properties or resources, things like that. So we at least know where they are and being aware of it. But I can't entirely answer that question. But we're also very early in this process and certainly keep an eye out. But we are aware of it and have no intent of changing that.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer.
Yeah. Well, and I will say one more thing. Sorry. There are some. Again, the ship house is the one that always crops into my mind because I'm essentially fascinated with it. Love a tour someday. It's a big property, and I know a long time ago, years ago, he had come in to possibly do put an ADU on the property, or maybe partition a little slice of the property off. Thank you, Linn. So I think those types of discussions would need to happen with the property owner. The historic resource or the historic property, is it the entire property? Is it is it the house and a certain amount of, I think it's going to be part of the conversation. And my guess is that I'll be coming back to you with some information and asking for your input as we move through figuring out what do we do with some of those properties. And how do we protect them? Is it the whole property is just hands off? Do we allow someone to partition a section of property that's not the historic part? So again, I don't entirely know, but I'm a huge history fan, so very aware of them and have no intent of ever touching that. And also, again, want to keep coming back to you guys and having you guys weigh in on stuff that might be of concern to you or something you see being problematic.
So Danny, it looks like there are 9 properties that we have.
9, okay. I knew it was like 7 or 8, okay, so 9, that sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, here's one. Can you see this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the data that we can get loaded on this website. So, but yeah, so they're these red dots. So we have put an overlay on this, so that can be part of the conversation when people look at this.
Yeah. And actually, Lynn brings up a good point. Those dots, the system we're using and the mapping and the overlays and all these things in GIS, they don't allow us to put all that information in there. So certainly someone could click it and make a comment as to what it is or why it's important. And, certainly feel free, any of you, to jump on and add to this and add to the discussion, but also add to the information that we have so people can see what's actually there. Lynn and I are both working very hard at doing this and our jobs. And so any help for things that we're not very good at or familiar with is greatly appreciated. And you guys might be able to bring a different sort of level of knowledge to what that red dot means.
Yeah. And some of those houses are very close to 43 too.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry, James, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. One of the concerns that Danny has, and you mentioned the ship house, the radio house, that has changed owners in the last year and a half. It's changed from a residence to a business. So Danny's concern and his question of how is that house now protected if the new owner doesn't want it to be is very valid.
So my question to you guys would be
what house
Yeah,
we're
what
talking
house are we
about
talking about?
with the ship house?
oh, you don't know that one? Yeah, it has like the entire communications room of a ship in the
Of the
basement.
USS Oregon, Battleship Oregon.
Where is it?
So it's the event center that's basically right before you get to Mary S. Young
Yep.
on the uphill side.
Yeah, so it's on the west side of Highway 43, just south of Mary S. Young.
Yeah, right across the street from the Lutheran Church.
Right.
Okay, thanks. Right here?
Yeah, and James and Danny, yeah, it's an interesting question. I didn't realize it was a straight business. I honestly didn't know that.
Yeah, they use it as, reception hall, event center, things like that. So
what is it on the national or state registry, or what's I'm only semi-aware of all these things.
local designation.
It's a local designation. So I guess it would have as much protection as any other locally designated landmark, if I'm not
James, is
mistaken.
it this piece of
Chapter
property
25.
right here? Is it this
Sorry,
one?
Lynn?
Is it this one right here?
We can't see your screen right now.
Can't see it.
Darn it, I'm sorry. I thought I shared my screen.
That's okay. No, you did for a while.
Yeah.
Is it this one?
I think
Yes.
that's it. If you zoomed in, I could tell you. I think that's
Yeah,
it though.
that's it. Yep.
So it's yeah, it's a historic landmark.
2375.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah, that's right. Because there's nothing else
Because I'm
around it.
almost positive the new owner took the radio tower down.
Was that part of the ship?
No, he got the radio room from the ship, but
Yeah.
that was a big ham radio tower that
Yeah.
had been up since the 60s.
Yeah, I remember that. Actually, I remember the first time I saw that like 5, 6, 7 years ago. I was like, dang, I've driven by that 1,000 times and never noticed it. And then
Yeah.
one day it never was. Like, oh, yeah, that's huge. Yeah, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you I have all the answers, but I think those are really good questions that we need to ask as we move through the process of what kind of protections do these landmarks have?
Yeah.
And if it's substandard, what can we do to help protect that going forward? And the last thing we want to do is suddenly, a protected property is sold to a developer and we're putting up condos or something. That's not the intent of the project.
The house next door, which not shares, but has an equivalent size lot. About 10 years ago, they divided that and put, I don't know, 3 or 4 houses behind it on the hillside.
Yep.
They widened the driveway so they could make like a little flag lot back there, but it would be a shame to do that at this other property,
Yeah, and I think Danny might have mentioned a minute ago how there's a bunch of houses down there too. And I know that we're also undertaking a wayfinding and signage project as well. And it'd be pretty cool to have a little walking tour. And I mean, I don't know if people would appreciate people walking past their house all the time, but I don't know. Maybe there's a connection there. Maybe there's something to be said to connecting these two projects and having. But again, the first part for us is figuring out how we can connect. And I know it's possible. I know you can walk from Lake Oswego all the way down to we'll call it Bolton Village. What is it called?
Road.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you can do it. It's just not real obvious. And I think it'd be really cool to get some really good walking paths and connections made. And if that happened to go by some historic landmarks and houses that are signed, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. And my last question, Chris, is along 43, there used to be a trolley. When historical City Hall was a train station, there was a trolley that went down 43. And there are some remnants of the right of way of that still. Is there anything that's been, to be able to point those out? I'm sure all that's been vacated to the homeowners by now, that there's probably not any right of ways, but the one that stands out is, Lynn, if you could pull the map back up again, and it would be north of West A on the uphill side, so the west side of the road. There's kind of a, let me look here. Keep going.
There you go, right there.
So go the other way. Go back towards Lake Oswego just a little bit. Where
You're
West
close,
A
Lynn.
hits.
Had it on screen for a second. Yeah, there you go. It's the bottom of the screen.
Where's West Day?
You're right there. It's right in the bottom right of your screen.
Yeah, so right where
Right there.
where the blue dot is, and then the green line along 43.
You scroll out just a little bit, Lynn.
Right, yeah. See right up there.
That green line.
That second blue dot right there.
Yeah.
It goes from that Randall Street to the apartments.
Okay.
And there's kind of a raised little bit.
Yeah.
Somebody just put a garage in there.
Yeah, it looks like a frontage road, basically.
Yeah, well, that was the trolley track right there.
Interesting.
And then as you go up a little further, where Deer Point Apartments are, built about 30 years ago.
Yep.
That used to be an old school right there. So, and because it has a really old rock wall around the Deer Point Apartments.
Yep.
That was all for that trolley area. I was just, so on this, I'm pointing at the screen. You can't see me do that. That green line there, what does that represent? Does that represent, that one?
That's actually the lines. Those green lines are sort of like technically trails in West Linn, or on our trail layer of our map. Isn't that right, Lynn? Those were the trails we highlighted, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I added that trail layer, and so the green is a path.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
But it does,
so
it's
so
kind of,
that's part of the old trolley line, as it
I wonder if this is
went down
here.
43.
So James, honestly, I think that's really cool. And I bet you there's probably 10 people in West Linn that actually know that, or maybe 20, I don't know. Not many of the 27,000 people, and certainly not many of the nearly 40,000 people that drive by it every day know it.
Right.
But I think I'm going to mention this to Alina, who's our economic development coordinator, who's in charge of the wayfinding project.
Okay.
Because I personally think these are the kinds of things that, I mean, I really like that kind of stuff, and I'm the nerd who likes to go to the historical society and read
me
about
too.
family stuff. And I'm 7th generation Oregonian, so I have pride in that as well. And I think those kinds of things are really really interesting and neat to more people than you might think. And I think connecting this project and those types of things to the wayfinding, I think would be fantastic. Getting a little placard or signage. I mean, I think that kind of stuff's really cool. Also, something to be aware of is I don't know personally, but the 2016 Highway 43 concept plan may have that as something that's being removed. I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm guessing that it might be something that they want to remove because frontage roads are not something we really like in transportation.
Right. But
So
that
it's
would be a
something that
for
maybe
them,
needs
you
to
know?
be talked about before it gets ODOT chews it up and spits it out.
Right. Put a sign on it.
Yeah, put a bird on it, put a sign on it, you know how we do.
Yep.
So when as I wrap up and let you guys go, what I'd say is, if you have time, go to our website, take the survey, drop some pins and comments on the map. Like, if nothing else, you know, you can be involved sort of from that distance. But certainly, if you see us out and about an event, stop by, say hi. We're trying to spend almost the whole year out and about gathering feedback. I want to hear from tens of thousands of people if possible. So I'm really trying to and spread the word. Vision 43. We want your feedback.
James, right here, you could drop a red pin, featured to preserve or improve.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, and I think Lynn's going to work on this here in the next week. You can take the survey without signing up, but right now on the website, in order to drop pins and comments, you have to register, meaning give us your name and email address. I think we're trying to turn that feature off because we want people to comment and we've had over 300 surveys taken, but only like 20 people have signed up on the email. So I feel like it might be a barrier for people to comment, and I'd rather just have your comments. I get that people don't like to get a lot of emails. So I think we're going to try and remove that.
I don't know if we can turn that function on.
I know we can do so many things, but so we're working on that. We hope we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one last thing, Lynn, if you can't turn that off, other sites that I've been on that have something like that will give you a generic email and username so you can have people drop in as generic user, you know, at a made up email, and then you guys accept that and people can comment off of
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting. This is a brand new system the city's using, and ours is the first project. So we're doing a lot of we're
Learning.
the guinea pig and a lot of learning on the fly. We at least wanted to get something up, but yeah, Lynn has done an amazing job. But yeah, there's been a lot of let's just say like my share the same
my
cube
work,
wall.
we had a system like that it was a completely anonymous, but you had to sign up with your email
Right, so it's
to
not
make a
anonymous.
comment.
Yeah,
And so it's not, so they can backdoor and
Yeah.
figure out who said what, right?
exactly.
So
What's
that
the
they came
point?
up with this generic email
Yeah.
to allow people to put comments in.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for letting me drop in and take some of your time, and I appreciate your time that you guys spend on the HRB. And please reach out. I'll come back to you guys with some updates as we get some information. You guys can laugh at it, throw it out the window, whatever you want. And you know, again, I'm happy to come back and keep you guys abreast of what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Chris.
thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Bye, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, Lynn, so are you the one doing the McLean House?
So I'm, yeah, I'll help, facilitate the rest of the meeting. I don't think John Floyd's at the Bolton Neighborhood Association meeting now, so, to give them an update. So, he unfortunately had to double book himself because of, just the meeting schedules and trying to get everything, trying to get everything in the spring. So, I'll give you an update on the McLean House. Our consultant has prepared the 100% draft nomination of the McLean House. And that she had that available for submitting on the March 1st deadline for the June SHPO review. However, the city, because of some internal considerations, asked her to withhold, to keep the draft nomination, hold it back until the July 1st deadline. So we will be submitting the draft nomination for the July 1st review, the July 1st deadline for the October State Advisory Board review. And the nomination would come after that, 3 months after that, 3 months, 90 days after that. So we just pushed it out 3 months. Concurrently, we've also asked the city council to approve. We've placed an agenda bill for the city council to review and approve the draft nomination on the May 13th city council agenda. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Thank you.
Linn,
the
do you
next
know
thing-
why the city decided to push it forward? I'm just curious if was it something about the application, or was it something like internal with the city council?
It's just the internal coordination between planning, parks, and the city council. So we wanted to just want to step back and make sure that we have a new parks director, so we want to make sure that everyone is on the same page as we move forward.
And now, is that going to affect the CLG grant? I mean, it's being funded by CLG grant, right?
Yeah, it makes it a little more tricky, but we figured that out, and and we're working with our consultant to make sure that we get the work complete, her work done by the end of August.
For the deadline, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool. All right, so number 7 on the agenda is Historic Review Board announcements. Is there any announcements from anyone on the board?
I wanted to mention a couple things. I went to the Garden Club presentation about his heritage trees in West Linn that the West Linn arborist presented. He's retiring shortly. I just thought I'd mention that I think the list of heritage trees in West Linn is somewhere between 8 to 12. They would like to get more of them. Not trees that are in backyards, but trees that are more readily available for public viewing. And then once they're nominated and accepted, the care of the tree becomes more of the city's responsibility. I don't think any trees have been nominated or added to the list in many years.
So
Yeah.
are the 2 black oak trees?
I'm sorry?
There's 2 black oak trees along the Willamette River. One on the path that was put in 5 years ago or so, along Volp. There's a black oak tree there, and then down a little bit closer to the settling pond, there's another black oak tree that's massive,
Are they big sized?
huge.
Oh, gosh, they should be nominated.
Yeah, and then like I was just telling John about the old Minky sawmill and where their house was, there's all kinds of very unique trees there that aren't normal for a riverbank tree. And
Well,
if there's a waterfront path going right next to them, the way it's been laid out, it'd be kind of neat to be able to identify those trees and,
I think the purpose of the Heritage Tree Program is to do trees on public land.
So this is on public land.
Within
Well,
view of, for public enjoyment, within view of
For public employment and totally, it's not, some of those are public land, some of them are PGE land, so. But like I said, that path is gonna go right past all those trees once this waterfront project gets kicked off,
So now would be the time to protect them.
Yeah, protect them just in case the path goes through one of those trees,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
So,
I'm leaving town next week for about 3 weeks, but when I come back, I'd be more than happy to walk through there with you.
oh, I would love to go, definitely. I'm not even familiar with what a black oak looks like, so, yeah.
It looks like an oak tree, but it grows a little bit more like it grows a little straighter up and down
Okay,
than like the oak savanna that on the hill there.
okay, neat.
Lynn, do you know the process of nominating for, what's our actual procedure for that for West Linn?
No, that's through the Parks Department and and the city arborist. And, I am not familiar with that process. So that's something I'm going to take a look at, and I can bring some more information back at the next meeting if you'd like.
He
So-
handed out a list of the trees and an application, and I can scan those and send them to you if you want.
Oh, no, I can get that.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah.
So Lynn, can we just have an agenda item on our next meeting of just discuss this again?
Sure. Yeah. I'll ask, would you like me to invite someone from Parks to talk to you about it? Or would you just like it to be John Floyd and I presenting what we know?
Yeah, you or John could probably do that, right?
All right.
I always hate to ask people to come in because, you know, it's difficult to get city staff. I mean, I don't want to say it's difficult to get them to come in because it's not, but we're taking advantage, I think, sometimes, but.
Okay.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that I viewed the proceedings of the appeal last night that went on for many, many hours. And James, I heard you speak, and it just brought to the forefront how much we need to get better design guidelines to eliminate a lot of the things that keep coming up with this project that was just appealed, that now has attorneys.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I wanted to bring up also is, I don't want to say every project that we review because some of them are, pretty easy. But a lot of the projects we review, there's always a question on this or that. And Danny and I talked about this 6 months or more ago now, probably more, huh, Danny, of what we wanted to do this year as an organization, try to clarify some of these things that are ambiguous. And I haven't heard, that was one of our things that we presented to council about having as a priority, but I haven't heard anything from staff or council of saying what our priorities are for this next year.
I'd love to know when we can start working on it.
Yeah.
If we can start working on it. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah. So Lynn, it was, I think the first council meeting in January is where that was presented, correct? Or was it February, the first one, the February meeting? But
We've
I
also,
haven't heard, and I don't know if anybody else in the group has heard what our priorities are for this next year. Or close to 5 months in.
Well, John and I talked about that, about talking about, at the next meeting, talking about, the plan coming up for you guys. I don't know. I think what you're talking about though with changing chapter 25 is a code change. And I don't know that that's a prioritized docket.
58, not 25.
Yeah. No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
Danny's correct. Yeah.
and that would be something that would need to be presented to the city council to then authorize you guys to do.
No, I know, but that was on our list of things to be presented to the city council, and that was supposed to happen like the first meeting of the year. If that hasn't happened, I'd be pretty disappointed that we're, like I say, 5 months into the year and we don't have a vision.
Well, I think maybe we should, I'll get back with John Floyd and we'll talk with you about, putting this on the agenda for the next meeting, and and John can bring some materials to you that he has updated.
Okay. Yeah, because like our November meeting maybe, or I think it was November, maybe October, we talked about things that we wanted on there. And then John wrote a letter basically to the council and shared it with me. And I said, yeah, those are the things that we had talked about. And it was supposed to go in front of council as what we thought our
I know
priorities.
what you're talking about. You're talking about the year-end report to the city council.
Yeah.
Yeah, with challenges and opportunities.
Mhm.
the council doesn't always act on that. It's a report to them, but they don't, and you know,
Okay.
they actually don't necessarily get back and then and re-instruct us, the CAGs to do things.
I'll talk to John in the next few days about it and just see where we're at. But I think an agenda item for next time to discuss this would be
Yeah,
good
why don't
too.
we do that?
I remember also on that list was considering creating a mission statement for the HRB. So we have a shared vision about what our purpose and goals are.
Mm-hmm.
That's it for me.
Right?
I-
To add to the
You
agenda.
brought up about the meeting the other night, and that's brought some major concerns to me about our even reason for existence, because we as a board made a recommendation to the planning commission on that project for the November one, and that's what this was about. And we made the recommendation, and that was ignored because the planning commission approved the building without our recommendation being considered. And then it went to City Hall, and it hasn't been decided yet, but it's on appeal. And it frustrated me because I don't know why we're here wasting our time if we're going to make recommendations and then it's going to be ignored. And we're supposed to be the experts on it, but apparently we're not. And so I am not happy. I'm very upset. Now, I've been on the board for 7 years. I've had a lot of decisions where I haven't agreed with them, but it's gone through the right process and we have been considered as a board and actually been listened to. I'm feeling like we are being ignored. And I believe it's partly our own blame because back in June, we sent a undecided to planning commission and asked them to make the decision for us. And I think at that point, we basically said, we don't want a planning commission do it. And that's not our goal.
I think what messed it up in June, Danny, to be honest, is we sent a split decision. We approved some conditions, but we said, we want the planning commission to weigh in on the third story, right? And so they took that as, we denied the third story, or we didn't deny the third story, but we approved everything else. And then they went in and threw it back at us. And when they threw it back at us, the applicant then took the third story off, right? So, I was trying to follow the timeline last night of Mr. Monahan, and that's kind of what I got out of it.
Right. Which is not what our intention was. We wanted some direction and they took it as a full
approval.
anyways.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not what we
If
intended.
you look at the notes that went up, we approved everything but the third story with there was some conditions, right? And then the applicant took the third story off and the posts for the awning off. And then it went to planning as we basically, HRB approved this except for this, and they took that off, so they approved it.
But they didn't take it all off though. The elevator lobby is still there. There's a deck there, and we didn't approve any of that. And
right.
They went around us, and that's I don't know. I'm not interested in wasting my time, jumping through hoops and going to meetings if we're just gonna be this little fake group that just makes decisions that doesn't get listened to. And gets ignored by city attorneys, that say, you guys made your decision and we didn't really make a decision. It's just frustrating. And again, I've been on, I have had other approvals and denials that I have been on, opposing side for. I'm not pouting that, I'm not getting in my way. I'm just saying that's not right. What's the point of us being here if we're being ignored? And it sounds like council is kind of ignoring us again because they didn't answer our question for direction either. I don't know. That's just my personal
point, Danny. I heard what you said, and I thought it was good to say, why are we here if we're not making the decisions about what we're supposed to be making decisions about?
Right. And I also think that Chapter 99 has been misinterpreted by staff too, because honestly, if you read Chapter 99, which is the way it defines how our organization operates, it doesn't clearly say that we are only an advisory committee. It actually says in the first part that we make the decision. And then the second part says we can recommend a decision. It's a very confusing way written when you read Chapter 99, because it literally has both written in the same chapter.
Right.
that we both make decisions and we also advise on decisions.
So Danny, you know, I hate to bring up the past, but like 8 or 9 years ago, 8 years ago, I don't know, when did you get on? Anyway, when I was on the board last time, we talked about this same exact thing. Do we make a decision or do we make a recommendation? You
Right.
know, and that's what has to be clarified, because if we're making recommendations, then you know what? Your frustrations are moot, right? If we're
Right.
making a decision, your frustrations are warranted.
Exactly.
You know,
Right, and I think what we should do,
in this decision-making process would be nice to know where we stand, you know?
maybe what we should do is have, when, at the next meeting, have a debrief and a discussion point on this. And we can have, we can ask, the council liaison to be at that meeting to discuss it. Would that
Yeah.
be a good thing?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it needs,
The
Chapter
last
99 needs to be
position
rewritten.
was that we are a recommendation body except that one instance.
Yeah, you are a decision maker
For
for,
one, what was it specifically?
Yeah.
It was for 3 stories. It was weird. It was very weird. I didn't agree with
Yep.
that.
No, I know. The frustrations are there, and it's all because it isn't written correctly, right? We don't know what our, you know, we're talking about a mission statement a second ago. We don't know what our mission is if we are a decision maker or a recommender.
right.
So why don't we put all these issues on the agenda? We can ask our council liaison to be there, and we can have, we can flesh these out a little more with John Floyd and set a goal, or, you know, create some goals that we want to accomplish.
Lynn, who is our council liaison now? Because I know we had one that now is
Mayor
gone.
Bielskowski,
It's Barry?
it's the mayor.
Oh, it's the mayor. Okay, all right.
Cool. All right. All right, so next on the agenda, staff announcements. Lynn, do you got anything for us?
I don't have any announcements, except for it sounds like we have some things to put on an agenda and